All right, our second Securing Abundance, only a day away. Welcome back, Amber.
Hi, Larry. Thanks for having me back. I'm
Oh,
happy to be here.
thank you, thank you. So yesterday we went real quick. It was an introduction. We never got through that article you had sent me from the Securing Abundance newsletter. So I do have it up here.
And what's the newsletter? Do you just want to remind everyone what
Oh,
the newsletter
sure,
is?
sure. That newsletter is. Oh, I had it right there. That is here, Securing Abundance newsletter. So you can sign up at our website under newsletter, and that'll bring you to the Securing Abundance newsletter, our future loop driven, AI driven, good news to help you make some good security decisions as you make your way through this wonderful, abundant, exponentially growing world here. So you had found one of the articles was from the US Department of Education launching an initiative to enhance STEM. So what caught you about this? I looked through it, and I got to tell you, I grew up in this system, and I'm a little skeptical, but maybe I shouldn't be that way.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's sort of, like when you look at your newsletter, there's a lot of hardcore security tech stuff in there. And this is education. This is like really grassroots, taking care of the kids. I was so excited to see it in there. And there's actually been three articles in the newsletter now about education. I don't know if that's because of the way I'm interacting with it.
It could
The
very well be. It could very well be.
Einstein is like Amber wants to see more on education.
Yeah,
So
for those
yeah,
listening, Einstein is the name of the AI behind the newsletter. So yes, that's Morgan McDermott's AI that he developed with Peter. Yeah.
and Morgan McDermott is the creator of Future Loop, right?
I believe, yeah, that would he's the programmer. He's Peter's full stack, so to speak.
Yeah. I'm just conscious people will listen to your podcast that don't even know who Peter Diamandis is.
Oh my goodness.
So,
Well,
do you
I
want to tell, and then we can crack into it maybe?
yeah, Peter Diamandis. For me, I was a little late to the game, but I saw him on a TED Talk in 2017, and I was like, oh, what a brother from another mother. I've been an old Timothy Leary fan since the 70s and 80s, and he had an acronym called SMILE, and it meant space migration, intelligence increase, and life extension. And there was Peter talking about, his at that time he had planetary resources, Singularity University, and his life thing. So I was like, oh, I gotta sign up. I got abundance. And Peter's basic takeaway for folks is that if you look at the data, as opposed to the biased news, CNN constant negative news, it's just pouring in, you know, bait to try to get you to whatever, buy a pillow or gutter helmets. If you look at actual data about life, it's getting better, exponentially better. People live longer, people live healthier, people have greater access to food, education, and it's going, the curve is just really, really sharp there. So it's a great thing. And we're moving from a time of scarcity where there wasn't enough to go around and people have to compete. The mountain people and the valley people have to fight it out so you get to the water, but we're moving to a time when there's enough around and we can all collaborate because everybody has something special. We're not clones. So now I say, as a security guy, our crypto can help, keep it secret. But crypto today, like blockchain technologies, it's more about making sure you're not lying or that things weren't damaged, in the shipping. So it's a wonderful thing. He followed up with bold and challenging people to think, challenge, solve real problems. Be bold. Don't. We've got, one of the things I love that he points out, Amber, is like, I was an old Batman fan, it's the 60s and stuff. And he had the Bat computer. And I was like, I would love to have a computer. And now everybody on their phone has a computer more powerful than the president of the United States had just 20 years
Mm,
ago. It's pretty awesome,
yeah.
and it just keeps coming faster. Peter had it released a couple of hours earlier, the interview, and I forget his name, with the creator of GPT-3.
Mhm.
Pretty amazing. Did you get a chance to see that?
I need to listen to it again. I was like in and out of it.
It's just amazing, where we're going, these large language models, and the ability to get, and I like what he said. We're never going to, I don't know that we're ever going to have human like intelligence. We'll get super alien intelligence. As a Star Trek fan, I don't know it can create a human, but it can create a Vulcan. So anyway, it's just really cool. And so that's Peter's take. And thank you. And I met Amber through Peter's Abundance digital community.
Yeah, awesome. You're the top member
Oh,
there.
that's scary.
Did you see that?
No, I did not. I did not.
Oh, okay. I guess it's the energy that you put into the system. That was
I told you
awesome.
I felt so cool that I made him laugh. So
I
I told him,
think I think Peter laughs quite easily, actually. He's just got that nature, infectious laugh. Yeah, that was awesome to give the context because not many people know who he is, I think, like in his circles and these influential, like big global companies, but at a mass scale, I think he's like quite an iconic person and leader that the masses could be inspired by. So it'd be really interesting to see how he's going to scale up over the next few years. He's definitely putting the tech in place to do that. There's
one
a
of my
company. Hmm?
I was going to say one of my favorite basic passions of his is that he says that as we move into this world of abundance, there's no reason to think that we can't give every human on this earth access to quality housing, food,
Mm.
education, and healthcare. We can do this in our lifetime, and it's never been true before, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's true. And like giving everyone access to education as well. So, when the internet becomes available for everyone, they can access all this information. And then for someone like Peter, scaling globally, I can't remember the company. I think it's called Life Story in Dubai, who he's building his AI with. So his actual like Peter AI. I don't know if that's still happening. But
There's been a few. There was the AI persona that he was dealing with. Oh gosh, I feel embarrassed. Life Force, Tony Robbins, he was doing
yeah.
something like that. Yeah,
Is that the one in Dubai? I think.
I'm not sure.
Anyway,
Yeah, I'm not sure.
education's paramount. So it's great if these leaders can get their messages out there. Yeah, the article. So should we jump back to that? It was
Yeah.
about the US Department of Education, $20 billion investment in You Belong in STEM education program. I'm Australian. You guys could probably tell from my accent. So I'm looking at this from a fresh eyes, no prior perspective or experience um, of the US market in the context of STEM education. But I love kids. I've worked a lot in the kids space. I actually applied to be a teaching assistant at the school that was set up at SpaceX. What was that school called? Can you remember?
Oh, I don't
There
know.
was a Yeah, there was a young teacher that Elon got to teach the kids on campus. It was really progressive and it was about problem solving. And it's very forward thinking, like the kids can actually go to school from home basically. And I saw some of the threads in the exceptional work that they're doing. It was like drip feet, like little droplets of it in this as well. So do you want me to
Well,
just,
actually, I have a 17-year-old who,
yeah,
as we go through this, that we're what 2022, 3 years of COVID. So she's
yeah.
doing work from home, and they had to, they were forced into it. And it's she obviously wants to socialize, but I
Mm.
always say there are zero shootings in school. And you're not from the United States, but as a parent, I'm worried, is she going to go in there and somebody goes crazy? So I love it that she can come from home, but I also of course appreciate that she wants to get some physical socializing in there.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the shooting. It's like I'm tired of seeing what's going on over there. Like, this is the nature of global information. Like, we don't want to be seen, the US, having your school shootings. Like, I'm just fed up with it. So I don't know how you guys solve that.
Well, I don't know.
Um,
I'll tell you what. One of the things that, as a security professional, and all of my students who are, CISSPs, they need
yeah,
to know about something called crime prevention through environmental design.
yeah,
And one of my, the key things, why do people commit crimes? And there's basically two reasons.
yeah,
People either commit a crime because they're competing and they think, hey, we'll get an unfair advantage. No one will know. You and I will split the money or whatever. And if they said no one will know because they don't want people to know they cheated. So having cameras, having just well lit areas, people are less likely to break into your car in a well lit parking lot than in a dark lot. So detective controls, we log that type of activity in our network, and they were not likely to do that. But there's another reason, and when people are disgruntled, they don't care. They think the rules are stacked against them. A disgruntled employee will do. They don't care if they're getting caught. These kids in society, they expect they're going to go down. Threatening a kid with a gun in school, and if you get caught with that, no, I'm expecting to get shot and killed. So that's not their problem. The countermeasure to disgruntled people really is to gruntle them, and it is a word. And it's kind of a joke, but it's part of CEPTED. One of the major countermeasures in CEPTED to keep people from whatever Bob's stealing from work or whatever is to make sure Bob's a happy employee. And one of the ways to keep people from freaking out on society is make a better society that's more tolerant of people. And we're watching it. I don't mean to say that people aren't working on this problem, way ahead of me.
Yeah.
But I think these initiatives to be more tolerant, to be more inclusive in society, to allow and let people be themselves without fear of punishment. And I think that's part of the counter, and I hope we can roll that out in the United States. I hope we can, as these new educational systems, that we can have a special school for Bobby who might, in this school freak out because he's not being recognized. He's being stacked against him.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because some of these kids that are doing this stuff, or teenagers, they're the outsiders. They've been bullied. There's some sort of psychological imprint there that's influencing manic behavior. Yeah. And the other thing is, is role modeling. When you don't know what you don't know. So if you're not seeing all these people shooting up schools, then you don't have a frame of reference or inspiration to really go and do it, do you?
Yeah.
So it's like
no, it reminds me of Timothy Leary talking about when kids were taking LSD in bad environments. LSD I believe in, but it's in a controlled setting. It's a reprogramming tool. It's not a party drug, but kids would do it. And so now they reprogram their brain and go, okay, I'm in this state. What am I supposed to do? Well, according to the news, you jump out of a window. And kids would do it. They're like, now you think you can fly and you jump out a window. It's like, why did you tell the kid that? Stop telling people they'll jump out of a window.
It's it bothers me because kids and teachers, like the purity of the nature of an environment, a school environment, for that kind of thing to happen, it's just so dark. And that's, any human would think that. The other thing that bothers me is everyone globally seeing this going on in the US and just thinking, like, what the hell is going on? You know what I mean? It's like the US is this, like, it's this strong country, it's this beautiful country, it's added so much value to the world, it's had people's backs, it's had inventors, and people have had such amazing impact. And then this shit show in schools is going on how many times a year? Like, it's just wild. And it's such a, I don't know, it's just like, as a nation, for the rest of the world to see that, and then to try and lead everyone else when you can't even solve a problem of that scale, where I can't remember what the number of shootings was in the first 6 months. Was it 220, or I don't know, it was just ridiculous. And I really hope as a nation it progresses for you guys, because it's just such a, it's murder, it's violence.
One of my favorite, I'm sorry, but one of my favorite authors besides Wilson is besides Leary, is Robert Anton Wilson. They were actually friends, and I thought it was he, but he wrote a book on, he wrote a story or something on Millennium Madness, and he actually drew patterns of like when we went from 1,000, to 9,900 to 1,000, he could find stories where people, that's proof God's, it's the end of the world. So he said that when people see these clock cycles, but that's one part of it. The other part is that it's just that as society keeps changing, my father didn't have access to the internet. He couldn't train me on that. His
Mm,
father may not even had a car when they grew up. They were horseback, and when you're all stuck in it, just keeps getting more complex and more complex. I think
mm,
people, without good schooling, without a supportive environment, people just start to crack them. They're starting to come unraveled in some ways. And I think it's just a sign that we need to chip in more as a team and provide a nicer, softer landing site for people, a kinder, society that doesn't. And if you mess up, too bad. As we get to the education, another great Peter thing about reinventing education is that whole, you start off with 100% and all you can do is screw it up, kid. As opposed to, what does my daughter do? She's a gamer. You start off with zero. And as you
mm,
screw up and you learn, and eventually you pick up points, you accumulate points in life for getting and learning, not punish
mm,
people for every stupid mistake. And it's hard.
mm.
And it's a really backwards way to incent people, I think.
Yeah, well, it's like what is a mistake? What is failure? You know, like how a kid's educated, what that actually means, I think is quite important. Is just learning, you know,
Yeah.
rather than I, completely screwed up. It's like, okay, well, or I got it wrong. I got it wrong, which is interesting. I really love this in the article and the digging that I did, the foraging in the internet forest. I what was it talking about? Where was I? Sorry, my brain's
Did I hear a dog in the background?
no
Oh,
dog.
I thought I heard something chipping around in there.
I was talking about giving feedback. So it was like so trying to cultivate kids not to say, oh, I did this because I'm smart, or you got it right because you're smart. It's more rewarding and cultivating consistency of effort and to keep going when they fail. I found that quite interesting because, like the standardized tests, it's all about getting it right or wrong, isn't it? It's not like, okay, there was this maths problem and the kid approached it with this sort of formulaic journey. Okay, this part was great, this strategy was great, but there was a little hiccup along the way. So do they get like partial acknowledgement for their strategic approach, even if they got it quote unquote wrong, which means you failed maths, and because you failed maths, you don't, so I found that really interesting. It was talking about, teaching the teachers about rewarding effort. But the thing is, the way the tests are structured, they don't do that. I
It's
found that quite interesting.
often a yes or no or something.
Yeah. So basically, they've invested all this money. I thought $120 billion is quite a lot.
It sounds like a lot.
What
Now,
is
what will we get for it? And I don't want to be sourpuss. Part of me is like, on how much of that will be wasted, but part of me is saying, Larry, anything is a good start. So there's bound to
yeah.
be some waste here, but at least they're doing something and seeing it. And it is a shame. I look at other countries where they really prioritize computer skills,
Mm,
and in America we didn't. We didn't prioritize that, and I was like the nerd, and kids want to be athletes; they didn't want to be a computer guy. But hopefully that's changing. Kids are seeing that technology is cool. I don't know, video
well,
games sure help.
it has to be present in their environment. So whether that's at school or at home, you know, uh, the yeah. So I just thought $120 billion. That is a lot of money.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is that being spent on? Like, you've got Khan Academy where the kid can go online and learn for bloody free. I'm like, it is so much money, and so
Hard. I don't know if they'll spend it, but I'll tell you where I think the worst part of it is. Here's the hardest part that I see. And I've worked with some computer teachers. I've dedicated time to help when my oldest was in elementary school. I would work with their computer teacher. I helped set up a network for him, all out of my free time because I wanted my children to have access. And they can't pay people very well. The salary that somebody with those skills, with the ability to run a network administrator is what they want. We're talking, in the US and the East Coast, you're looking at 100,000 plus, and they're not going to pay a teacher that I know of. So what I see happens since the 80s, they dump the equipment into the school. They force a teacher who knows how to type. Oh, you know how to type, therefore you must be good with computers. That was the 80s. You type letters. I've seen you on a typewriter. But they're not really made for that. And I don't know. And even if the teacher says, the best case, the teacher goes, I'm going to pour it in, I'm going to learn. And then they're like, do you want to stay here? Do you want to get a job making 3 times as much outside? So that's my challenge. I don't know how these kids are going to get, unless it's more like I got open, a chat GPT-3. It's stuck in my head that let them just work with an AI coach. Let the coach, and then you can scale it,
Yeah, I like that concept. So where would they get the AI coach?
Well, somebody could develop. Now, the way I'm seeing GPT-3 is, I think it's still in like kind of beta. I don't know that they've opened it up to third-party developers yet. Like, I would love to have a chat bot on my website that uses that as its engine. But if somebody could develop an app, I could see either on the phone or something, just on whatever multi-platform. But my kids are on their phone all the time, and then they'd be able to just chat on it and say, "Hey, I got to get a report done on whatever Egyptology," and it's like, "Oh, it's particular year, Pharaoh, whatever, Ramses II," and then start talking with it, and then they could generate the text. And where some people might look at, but if they didn't actually type it in themselves, then how do I know they're learning the way I did or whatever? And it's kind of like, look, if the kid can use a calculator, I don't know that he needs to do all that type of math, and memorize all of these things. I don't know.
It's interesting because there's building a strategy based on the demographic profiles of the kids. So I'm just going to start with the main one, which is age. So, what is, because you're talking about a touch point there. So that's an AI coach. That's one kind of touch point. And others might be, so I wrote down the different buckets. So there's self-taught, homeschooled, learning from friends and classmates in school or at a club, at school, an organisation teaches them, or after school. So there's these different touch points at the moment. And then it's like, well, what does that strategy look like based on the age? So how does that look like? Because a toddler at kindy is not going to use chat GPT, are they? I don't know.
And maybe girls would, but boys wouldn't at that age, or 80% of boys, and that's a great idea. And I think what we have to do in these new times where you don't know what's coming out next year, be gentle and let people play around and go, for us, this seems to work. But then I'm wrestling with this standardized state-sponsored school system where I grew up in the inner city and where truant officers came looking for kids who weren't there. Parents could get arrested if their kid wasn't in school. So how do we satisfy the state's well-meaning, requirement that people are educated? With that. Do we need the police coming in and telling parents, nope, they got to learn 3rd grade, they need to know multiplication tables? I don't know where that comes in.
Well, if you have a mobile, you can access all the information in the world. So that's why I'm looking at that $120 billion. There's 49.5 million students in the US.
What was that number?
49.5 million students.
Wow. So
in the US.
Yeah.
So what if you just gave everyone a phone? I don't know. I just thought it was so much money. And that was like,
It
Yeah.
is a lot of money, and maybe, because it's not the soft skills. And like you said, you can go on AWS or Azure and spin up a server for nothing in the lab. It's
Mm.
the initial device to get them on the internet. And
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
yeah, so maybe you're right. Maybe it's you get them some wireless device, and of where that 120 billion goes. That I'm really hoping it's the glasses. Of course, I'm waiting for my Apple Glass.
Yeah. Well, I know Google's been still using the glass in a medical context. They were before everyone else. They were too early,
They were too
basically.
early. Yeah, we call that
Yeah.
bleeding edge versus leading edge. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
And Microsoft, they still have the HoloLens is that high end, medical and other type of
yeah. I
simulation.
think the glass is interesting. Again, it comes back to that demographic strategy. So, what is good for a 2 to 3 year old? What is good for a 3 to 4 year old? What is good because they're going through such different, like, brain development, social development, physical development, that, like, the strategy very much needs to be geared around the different demographic profiles, I think. Do you want me to share any more? I've got a bit more.
Yeah, yeah, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I took so many notes. I was like, yeah, it was very inspiring.
My goodness,
Um,
I'm trying to think how I could reference like this when you sent me this link. So
yeah,
I was able to pull this one out.
maybe because they were talking about with STEM teaching kids about neuroscience, which I thought was really interesting because, for a kid to understand how their brain works, then they can better understand how all their friends' brains work. And then they can better work together as teams. So then, I don't know, it's good for cultivating their friendships. And then they practice that at school, doing like team tasks. And then they go into the world and real world and they start working with people and they do a better job because they understand how the brain works. And if they're studying STEM, then they use tech to build better solutions because they actually understand how people's brains work and they will interact with those tech solutions.
And it reminds me actually of my 17-year-old psychology is she wants to major in school, and my wife is the tiger mom. How much do they make? You know,
Yeah.
versus an investment banker. And I just feel that knowing psychology, knowing how people think, would enhance any career. I mean, you'd be a better salesperson. You'd be a better whatever. A doctor. You'd have better, a patient bedside manner. So I think learning how the brain and the nervous system and how our neural nets train and stuff. Yeah, it's like learning how to learn.
This is it was interesting. I'm trying to find the page where they talk about the psychology of the teacher engaging with the student. Page
What kind of learner were you in
16.
school? What kind of learner when you were young? Were you like an astute, paid attention to the teacher?
In art class, I used to start dancing discos. Oh my God. But you're like totally allowed to do that in art, sort of. It's a creative environment. How was I?
Yeah.
Uh, I was like homework queen, super like goody two shoes, everything, top 10 in the class until my parents split up. And
Oh,
then I got a bit aggro.
how old? How old was
um,
that?
I was just hitting puberty, so it was not a good time.
Oh,
And but yeah, I think, I worked hard. I wasn't really structured. That's not the way I am. Um, I loved learning from my teachers. I'm more an auditory learner, so like textbooks were not my friend.
I was terrible.
I, like lines and lines of stuff just like was not good for my brain. But yeah, I guess I had really great teachers. that really invested me and believed in me, even when I was going through some emotional stuff, and did a
And
lot
that,
of
well, and
team.
let's pause there, and because that's an important thing. I've also had some important teachers that going through some difficult times, and that
Mm.
means a lot. And I don't know that an AI coach can do that. That's where human compassion can't be replaced. I don't think.
Yeah, that deep sense of empathy and reading a kid's face that's not talking about something and picking up on that something's happening, or that really delicate nuance. Um,
I mean, they may get better, but for me, I think I always say, like, I don't know that my cat would ever want a robot taking care of it. It wants a human to pick it up. So I'm sorry, I interrupted. So it's up until around puberty, you were mostly very dedicated, stayed at school, but then you started getting more creative, didn't like to learn from books.
yeah, I mean, I still did well, but I was just like, I don't know, I think my attention span in class was it wasn't as good.
Definitely I was terrible. I was actually a special student. I was one of, and I
Yeah.
don't know how they would diagnose me today, but I loved art. And my one teacher said, you can't put Lawrence near a window. He'll just go right out there. I was a daydreamer, and I loved math. And I can remember, my teacher would just, like, out of nowhere try to catch me on a multiplication, and I'd be like, 81. I'm like, oh, you can't catch him. But other than that, I was E. I mean, a flunk. I was flunk. I would no, I'm not doing spelling. Write that. You got to write that word down 100 times. I'm not doing that. I just wouldn't do it. And I
Well,
got
I think that's cool because if you're not interested, like, don't do it. Like, we shouldn't be forcing kids to learn stuff which isn't aligned with their nature. There's fundamentals.
well, actually, there's something that I think and it's a double-edged sword, but that my children, I both, I want them to be aware. I said, on the one hand, all of my teachers, and I had some wonderful, encouraging teachers, but I had some
Mm,
that they were like, "You're never going to be anything. You're going to run it. No, it's not going to work. You're going to find out." And I'm pretty sure that by 30 or 35, I was making more money a year than any of my teachers could make as a teacher. So I was like, "Well, in your face." So I always tell my children, it's like, and when they said, oh, the other thing that I hated growing up too, and I was in the 60s and 70s, they said, well, my friends knew what they wanted to be. A lot of kids, you should know what you want to be. Do you want to be a mailman?
mm,
Do you want to be a doctor, the policeman? What do you should know by now? You're 14 years old. You should have an idea of what you want to be. And if I were to tell them I want to be an information security, like a crypto specialist on asymmetric cryptography, they would have sent me to a special school or something, right? So they couldn't have known. And that's what I tell my
mm,
children too. I said, be kind to your teachers. I don't want you to be confrontational, but they can give you their opinion. But you are the CEO of your future, and they're not likely to know
mm.
really the best thing for you. They're going to give you ideas if basically if I were you, but they're not.
Yeah.
They're not.
That's really interesting, like that whole projection thing, of like a teacher telling you what you should be or a parent giving their opinion. It was
Mm.
Naveen was talking about his daughter, Naveen Jane,
Yeah, yeah.
and he was talking about his daughter and that she was like so anti-tech, and then he's like, just
I
wait,
heard
just
the
go,
talk.
yeah,
And he got her. That's where I heard it. Now I remember. That's where he took her to Singularity University, where they had a high school program, right?
yeah, over summer,
I
and
was
that's
so
just
jealous.
it's like just wait until you get exposed to this. And I think that's the thing is, like, whether it's tech or anything, like giving kids the opportunity to experience everything, and not to pigeonhole them, because I feel like I tried sport, I tried music, I did debating, I did it all. I did general studies, I did the languages. So I had this like sort of very broad sweeping like, I don't know, it was a diverse experience in school, which I think's important. So, they know what the options are out there, and
Yeah,
they
and
get educated in different spaces.
now I think it's going to continue to open up cyber wise, but the challenge is, how do we maintain. I think it's important that kids have a physical place where they can physically get together and play games and
Mm,
work physically. But I don't know that it has to be at the same time every day during rush hour that they got to get up.
yeah.
One of the worst things that really annoys me, especially since Peter had on the Why We Sleep. But I was names escaping me, but it's terrible. And children don't get enough sleep. And
Mm,
my daughter has to leave the house at 7:30 in the morning. And it's just, I'm like, why? Why
mm,
can't she just, they'll have some time period when it's convenient for her and a group of kids that work well together in this physical environment to do that. But, let her train on her own for, at your own pace, at your own time schedules. And I don't know.
mm,
And I think it's coming. I'm not a sourpuss. The world sucks.
mm. It's interesting you mentioned about like the kids doing things together. Like I lived for my sport, as in, like the team coming together. For me, that was like the highlight of, well, every day. It's pretty much every day. Um, yeah, I
You know
like,
what
oh,
we
because
still can't
you,
do? I'm
yeah,
a musician, and we still don't have the bandwidth and the hardware. And like Zoom certainly can't handle more than say two people jamming at
that's
the same
true.
time. And I would
Yeah,
love to be able to not leave my house. A lot of my musician friends are my age and older. My bass player's like near 70, and he doesn't. Well, in fact, we go to his house because he doesn't feel like going anywhere. But
yeah,
I would love to be able to get that speed, and I'd really like to see it here. And so that's where I would always get together as a teenager, for band. I was in a
yeah,
punk rock band in those days.
awesome.
And then, we did our sports, our outdoor in inner city. We also had something that I was just showing somebody in North Philadelphia. There's some weird thing. We didn't have swimming pools when I was growing up. So to play in the water, we
Mm,
would turn on a fire hydrant. And then, special kids were strong enough. I knew the trick how to spray that, and we'd play in the fire hydrant. But those days were fun. My kid never, especially with COVID. I mean, from 14 to 17, she's
yeah,
mostly
wow.
home every weekend. It's
So
insane.
what has her, we're like very much in the team thread. Like I was in orchestra too. So you're talking about like jamming, developing those social skills. Like how do we riff out and actually make a song of it? Or how do we win that championship? It's
You know,
like this.
it's in anything, in any sport where it's a team sport. But for me, with music, it's like that's when you learn, hey, dude, you're not, allowing other people to do their moves, or you're
Mm,
not in time, you're too loud, oh, sorry, So, and in
mm,
sports, you're like, dude, you ran too far, you forgot to turn around, and you learn to interact better. Yeah, we
mm.
do that. We definitely.
So you were talking about the ability to do that based on the environment. And you were saying it in the context of, I don't really see why we have to go to this place at certain times of day. So it's like, what's the future model of schooling ensuring that kids can still have this team experience as they grow up? Is it a hybrid of, at a location? Is it, what's the mix of that look like?
Yeah. Who's to say? My
Yeah.
mind goes on all different directions. One thing is like I'm picturing, we still will probably always have, the good old fashioned hand to hand, whatever martial arts or football or baseball or whatever. But we'll also have more haptic suits where the guys in that room downstairs or what used to be their garage,
Mm,
and where he feels like he's playing tennis against somebody else. He is whacking a stick and hitting a ball, but that person's around the world. Uh, I bet you it's going to be a mix of all kinds of stuff.
yeah, imperative though for their growth. Um, so I was just trying to find the neuroscience piece, and it was based on,
And I would like to know if I could search my thing to find it because it does update every day, but some stories do not. PKI trends. Oh, this is where I'm at, and IoT trends. Which one am I?
oh, here we go.
Oh, we were talking
So,
about this guy. Oh, that's another one. That's not the one. Did you see the article you were talking about?
oh, that's it. Yeah.
Oh, this is one of them. This is one of the things. We were talking about this yesterday.
The Bitcoins. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so the same. Oh, it's on track. They have been around. For any of my listeners, if you're my age, since the 80s, they were in the back of PC Magazine on track. In fact, they made a utility. Oh gosh, what was the utility? But everybody used it to try to recover stuff. And they've been and send your drive here where they have these oh, what are they called? But they're these rooms with no dust. I forget what they're called, but these pressurized rooms. So when they take the drive out, no dust can land on it. So he's hired on track to 7,000, and where's it at? About 17,000 today. Oh yeah. When did he lose it? In 2013.
Oh, good luck. Best of luck to him.
It's so sad. Well, at least he lost it for a different reason. Most people forget their passphrase.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Yeah. So I found this I found the bit on the psychology.
You want to send in the chat? You want to send me a link?
Can I share screen or
we could do that too. I mean, we could do that. Hold on.
How do I
make a co-host? And you should be able to now. Let me stop my share.
Okay, so it says here, experimental work suggests that feedback given in the form of praise focused on what they call global intelligence, i.e., you're smart, may have a negative impact on future learning behavior in comparison to praise about effort. You must have worked hard. Elementary school students who were given praise about their intelligence after correctly solving a problem were likely to attribute future failures to lack of ability, have lower interest, show less persistence on future tasks, and have a goal for future tasks of looking smart. Well, I guess, is the system set up, the way that the testing is done and the, what do you call it? The marking is your smartness is determined by what a score out of 100. I don't know. I don't have kids, by the way, everyone. I was a kid a long time ago, so that's my frame of reference. But
my immediate thing is the work suggests that given in the form of you're smart. So that means you're telling a kid either you're smart or you're dumb. And if you don't get that, well, you find another to live in. Just don't do something where they pay you for brains because you're not one of them. Versus you must have worked hard. And that's teaching a kid as long as I try, I can accomplish it. Yeah, I like that as opposed to, sorry, you just don't qualify. Your hands are too short. You'll never be a musician, something like that.
So it's very much like part of this is actually moving away from binary projection and binary thinking. It's like you're this or you're that. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're smart or you're dumb. No, you're not. You're Larry. I'm Amber.
For now.
In contrast, children who were given praise about their effort were more likely to believe that subsequent failure was due to lack of effort. Show higher persistence.
As opposed to innate, I'm just not good enough. That's a thing I had with, raising children is when they say, I'm just not good in whatever. I'm just not good in math. And I go, well, you just haven't tried yet. It's not that you're not good. And one of the things I remember learning martial arts very, very early, I was probably still a teenager. And I had it was before I started hanging with Tom. I had a Vietnamese martial arts coach who studied Shaolin for many years. And, he mentioned that he took a job as a cook. And I said, I didn't know you can cook. And he goes, with Kung Fu, you can do anything. And the word Kung, it just literally means like work, like it's the same as gong or gong, qigong type of thing. So if you work on something, as long as you work hard, and Fu is just a person, a man or whatever. So if you work, you can get good at it. And I love that. I love that concept that it's not that you're good or bad. It's that have you worked on it? Now, where we get good is if you love something, you're going to work on it. That's why, we always have to follow your passion. A good parent says, do what you love, because then you'll do it a lot and you'll get really good at it. But if you do something you hate, you're not going to want to do it in your spare time. You're going to regret it. And it's just going to be miserable. You're not going to be good at it.
That's so true. It's so true. and they were talking here. So show higher persistence on difficult tasks and the goal of mastering challenging tasks on concepts rather than just looking smart. Thus,
Yeah,
teacher
look at me.
feedback.
I'm the smart guy. I've already
Yeah,
passed the test. I must not like these dumb people. I,
yeah,
I love
exactly.
it. I love it.
It's like, and that's comparison thinking too. And comparison is the thief of joy. So it's like, it's the ironic thing is the reward system and the ranking system is binary, yet the training in this document for the teachers on how to engage girls to do more maths and engineering, it doesn't reflect the how do you say, the standardized testing. Do you know what I'm saying? So here they're saying you're either, or don't tell them that,
They're
don't give the
smarter than
feedback that you're smart, or
me.
I doubt they'd
Right.
say you're dumb, but
Sure.
give them feedback about effort. Well, then when you're doing the marking and it's what I said before, that should the test results actually be based on effort and strategy and how they approach things, rather than you got it right or wrong, or you're
And
smart,
I'm
or
I'm I'm going to go back to Peter's gamification of learning. You know,
mm,
if it's like you're smart versus you worked hard, then people just they start off with zero. And the more they
mm,
work, the more points they accumulate. And they realize, hey, the secret to getting points is just working.
mm.
I always say I
You've
go
been
back.
working hard. That's the next line.
Yeah, yeah. I go back to martial arts, and in movies, there's always some analogy, there's something. You're the chosen one. You have the special gift of the dragon. You were for the ages. You were and it's never like that. It's always, how did the master get so good? He spent a lot of time doing it, or she spent a lot of time doing it.
Mm.
I'm willing to bet it's a direct correlation. Yeah.
Yeah, so I liked that guidance that they were giving the teachers in this document. I don't know if we can put anything in the chat, but or you can put it wherever you're putting this, but I'll just drop it in the chat.
That'll
So
work.
that was interesting. And there seems to be a big focus on getting girls into maths and engineering because it's been a typically male dominated space. And they were saying that this is generalizations, that girls just generally think guys are better at maths and engineering than girls. Like that's a societal
And I
thing.
suspect that there are, predisposed biases, but it's never 100-0. And as far
Yeah.
as overall math goes, no, I don't buy it. And it's kind of funny. My wife is also in our field, in my field. She likes to tell people I do it for a living. Larry likes to talk, talk, talk. If you need somebody who
Mm.
actually can do the work, I will have to piece those two pieces together. I wanted to share my screen. But she often has to fight with and I, as an instructor, I could tell you that over the 30 plus years I've been teaching, my classes are 95% men. But it's not that we don't get brilliant women. In fact, in particularly some of the techiest, nerdiest stuff I do is called packet analysis, and Wireshark is the tool. But some of the top Wireshark nerds in the world are all women. So Laura Chapel, you're seeing guys, but perhaps the queen of it all, Laura Chapel, and there's a number of Betty Du Bois, and so I
Yeah.
know a lot of really nerdy, brilliant women, in this field, but they do face a challenge, and it's tough, and it's this culture of that we were talking about in the last episode about people insulting people on the internet, and the trolling.
Mm.
And there are guys who will troll women on the internet, and I know a lot of women that have to deal with it. They have to deal with some misogynistic boys network,
Mm.
that aren't easily allowing them the room. It's like in our field, it's very common for when a woman has something brilliant to say, a guy has to turn to her. Is usually doesn't even know what she's saying, trying to. It's not what we're talking about, honey. and
Mm.
you got to sit there and go, oh my dear God, please, Calgon, take me away. So it's tough, and I've seen a lot of, I see a lot of women in the field, but I also know that a lot of them face some really bad, stuff, and hopefully that's getting better. But
Yeah, I think that's as with anything, it's maybe not necessarily just your field. Um, and they were talking about, it's interesting. They were saying in the strategy that they needed more, they were trying to teach the teachers to say these girls need more female role models, as if the best route to get a female into maths and engineering is for her to be inspired by a female role model. So, like, I can do it like her. Well, I'm like, okay, that makes sense, but shouldn't you be getting male role models in for these young girls too that have,
isn't that weird?
I was
I don't
like,
know the right answer. I don't know. I see that all the time. She's a great role model for women in tech, and I go, okay, but isn't she just a great role model? Does she?
yeah,
But that's not easy. And I often feel like, and I have a daughter that, a couple of daughters, my youngest especially, will go, Todd, you don't understand right now where you're coming from, and you
uh,
keep your mouth shut. So I want to be careful before judging anything. But a lot of times I do feel that way. It's like, just have role models and try to break down whether or not it's male or female.
yeah,
Worry about
that's the whole point, right? And it's like if you're going to go in and work in a male dominated space, then see the guys that are doing it, that are making the change, that are driving the innovation. I'm all for the male role models. So I thought that was a bit imbalanced, to be honest. That was a key takeaway for me. But I love the fact that they do want to inspire girls to get more into the space, and they have a strategy built around that. But I just thought it was a bit closed-minded just to be talking about female role models. And there was an interesting part in there. The language in it is interesting in this. There's a dear, what have they done? They did a letter to, what is it? Dear colleague letter. So the Department of Education is sent out, I guess it's a letter that talks about to the district leaders
do you want to share your?
about
You
the,
have it right there.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, there's a lot of text. The thing was, they were talking about in their strategy the barriers to education. And I was like, what barriers? Literally, what barriers? There's the internet,
It is amazing,
you
and
know?
I wonder how many people, like, if you're connected, it's like the spoiled American, and sometimes I feel lucky that I was brought up so poor. Uh, I'm amazed. I'm amazed that when I was a kid, and I can remember we had to solve an argument. I had made the comment at like 7 or 8 years old that I had learned that the Earth was actually technically closer to the sun in our winter, in the northern hemisphere's winter, but it's really the angle of the Earth. And my friend didn't believe that, and his older brother was ready to beat me up for saying that. No, the reason it's hotter is because the Earth gets close. I said, no. And he said, we're going to go over, we're going to find out whose mom's home. And we're going to find out if I find out you're wrong, I'm going to punch you in the face. And so now I'm like hoping he knocks it. My mother worked and she was the smartest of the moms. And he knocked, and I was like, oh, please, Mrs. Franny, will you please know the answer? And she did. But
Mm,
now you just go to Google.
yeah. Huh.
we I also do, we had like a 26 volume encyclopedia. We probably had 12 volumes of the 26 set. So like, and they were old. And I remember doing a report on General Patton. I had just seen the movie with George C. Scott, and I wanted to do a report. I was like 9 years old in school, and I look at World War. Where's World War I versus two? They were that old, so we didn't even have a complete set. But again, I was like,
Mm,
just go to Google. Every kid today, oh, great Google. How far
exactly.
is this
So
thing?
this barriers mentality, barriers is like a brick wall word. It's like it's
Yeah.
not exactly like we're going to pioneer something. So I'm like, what is there a root problem here in terms of the psychology of the strategy development, which brings me back to the point of, okay, you're going to spend $120 billion. Well, if you can break down the barrier to access to the internet, say every family in America doesn't have a mobile phone, give them a mobile phone. Because, when you've got access to the internet, you've got access to everything.
The other
So I
thing,
just,
I think an educated society is going to make better decisions too. That's the other thing. It's
mm,
like, well, they got to learn to pay for it. Why should we just give it to them? And because they're going to make better decisions if they're educated. And don't you
yeah,
want a society that's educated instead of just trying stuff? So
yeah.
the return on investment of having an educated, citizenry is amazing. But you were
Like
talking
that one tool. Hmm?
Tom, who couldn't make it today, it teaches penetration testing, and you come up with barriers. They've got their firewalls. They've got this, but he has this whole take on. I'll save it for a future thing of how you either some people will try to go over the wall, some people try to tunnel in it, some people will go
Mm,
around it. But there's always a way. You don't let it sit. Walls or any penetrative control, or excuse me, defensive control, doesn't really say forever. They say for this time. So when you buy a safe, even if it's a home safe to put it doesn't say forever. They're rated based on time, and typically the average home safe is 15 minutes. So it's just when somebody puts a barrier, you just go, all right, so you're going to slow me down, but it doesn't mean I'm going to stop.
mm,
So I want to, we're coming up on our hour, and I want to tell you that one of my favorite sayings, I work a lot with the US military. The Marines have a statement about you make a plan. This is where you're going to go. That's your destination. But the road is tricky, that you can't predict the weather. But you will always improvise, adapt,
mm.
and overcome. Yeah. We never know what's going to happen. We don't know the weather. We can't predict it, but we'll get there. We'll improvise, adapt, and overcome.
That's beautiful.
Thank you, U.S. Marines. Semper Fi. Which I
Yeah,
was never a
exactly.
Marine. I've always been a contractor. I was. We were talking about schooling. I was not the best student. I didn't make it through school. I have a ninth grade education. I got a job. I've been working since I was 9 years old at a grocery store, and I just always felt something was going to click for me. I didn't know, and then I think you saw it. I posted that book. I saw a book on space careers. I was a video game nut when they first came out. I got into the Commodore 64, and I saw the space
Mm.
careers thing, and I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get into computers and be a computer repairman or something.
I'm so glad you did, that we all get the chance to learn from you.
Oh, and I learn
Um,
from my students all the time. That's what really is so rewarding about my job, especially in I usually get people have to pass an exam to maintain their job. Yeah,
mm.
and they do it, for whatever GDPR compliance. They're very good at their job. They just didn't know. I said, you didn't know it was called that most of the time. You knew how to do that, but you didn't know that's what it was called on the menu. So I get to learn every week from my students, and it's a wonderful, wonderful job. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that two-way street. Like when the teacher's learning, I used to have that when I coach the kids at sport. It's like it's very much a two-way street. It's not just the teacher's a student as well.
And so we're closing up. You keep talking about it, and I never asked what sports were you coaching kids in?
Basketball and netball,
Oh, wow.
and maybe I did a bit of athletics. But yeah, it was basketball and netball. It's nothing more rewarding than like helping a kid like be better at something. I just got so much energy out of it. It was more exciting than like playing myself. It's like, oh, teaching them about strategy and plays on the court and, how to do their shot. And yeah, and in the context of like being part of a team, we won.
Nice.
Because they trained so hard, and it was just beautiful to see their commitment and their growth and their development. Yeah. And I wonder sometimes like what impact it had on the rest of their life. Whether it had any, I don't know. But
You never know. You never know. It's like that butterfly effect, right? The
yeah,
tiniest little atom in the right direction, and boom, that was the thing that did it for you.
yeah. Well, you can maybe I can feel it in the air somewhere. And that's why the memory is so deep in my heart, because it's still present in the universe, or the impact is, if that makes sense.
No, it absolutely makes sense. I think I mentioned I'm a big Sabine Hassenfelder fan these days. Over the last years, she's a great physicist, got a YouTube channel, and I'm really stuck on. I'm sure I'm not alone. The concept of time doesn't necessarily exist in
Mm.
quantum. It's like anything that happened is always happening. I've been kind of putting that out. It's like the Big Bang didn't necessarily happen whatever 13.7 billion years ago. It's always happening. We use time kind of like the way we use latitude and longitude. So this is how far away I am from Greenwich Mean Center.
Yeah.
That's where I am right now. But it's not that it's always happening. So no, if it happened once, it's always happening.
And talking about time, I love this topic because you've got kids. I don't have kids. You've got this experience teaching students, and education is the root of everything. And if we can get it right for our kids, there's nothing more important than that. So if you're open to like continuing the conversation, because I only just scratched the surface, and
You are welcome back every week, Amber. Thank you.
okay,
No, I love it. I love it. So why don't we pause for today? It's been an hour. And thank you
yeah,
so much,
cool.
everybody. I'll see you next time. Same black time, same black channel.